My name is David, and I'm a 28-year-old overnight custodian at Portland General Hospital. I've been working the graveyard shift for 3 years now, maintaining the sterile corridors and patient rooms while the day staff sleeps. The work suits my temperament, methodical, solitary, with clear beginning and end points to each task. The recurring dream started in late November 2023, always beginning at exactly 3:17 a.m. in my sleep cycle. I'm pushing my utility cart down the pediatric ward's main hallway, the fluorescent lights above creating that familiar institutional hum. But the corridor stretches longer than it should, and my cart's wheels squeak in a rhythm that doesn't match my walking pace. Room 314 always draws my attention. The door stands slightly ajar, though hospital protocol requires all patient rooms to remain fully closed during overnight hours. Inside, a young boy sits upright in the hospital bed, maybe 7 years old, with dark hair and unnaturally alert eyes for someone his age. He stares at the far wall where shadows move independently of any light source. When I approach the doorway, he turns toward me with mechanical precision and whispers, "The man in the white coat comes back every Tuesday night." I wake up immediately after hearing those words, my sheets damp with perspiration, heart rate elevated. The dream maintained perfect consistency, same timing, same dialogue, same unsettling atmosphere for nearly 4 months. I began dreading Tuesday nights specifically, though the dream occurred regardless of my actual work schedule. Sleep aids, meditation apps, even switching to day shift temporarily, nothing disrupted the pattern. The dream felt less like a product of my subconscious and more like a scheduled appointment I couldn't cancel. Then, on a particularly busy Thursday in March, a pediatric ward admitted a new patient, 7 years old, dark hair, eyes that seemed to process information with adult comprehension. His name was Michael, brought in after experiencing seizures at school. Standard observation protocol, run diagnostics, monitor overnight, discharge if stable. I was assigned to maintain his wing during my shift. Everything proceeded normally until my 3 a.m. cleaning rounds. I found myself walking down that same hallway from my dreams, though the actual hospital layout matched perfectly. The fluorescent lights hummed in that familiar frequency. My cart wheels squeaked in the exact rhythm I remember. Room 314's door stood slightly ajar. My hands trembled as I approached. The antiseptic smell seemed stronger, more concentrated. The temperature felt several degrees colder than the surrounding corridor. Michael sat upright in bed, perfectly motionless, staring at the far wall. The shadow I'd observed so many times in sleep moved there, formless but definitely present. When he turned toward me, his expression matched my dream memories with disturbing precision. "The man in the white coat comes back every Tuesday night," he whispered. The words hit me like physical impact. This wasn't sleep paralysis or hypnagogic hallucination. I was fully conscious, fully aware, experiencing my recurring dream and waking reality. "What man?" I managed to ask, though my voice emerged as barely audible. Michael pointed toward the corner where the shadow moved. "He used to work here. He hurt children. They made him leave, but he returns sometimes. He knows I can see him." I looked toward the indicated corner and experienced a moment of absolute terror. A tall figure in a white medical coat stood there, face obscured but radiating malevolent intent. The room's temperature dropped noticeably, and I could see my breath forming small clouds. I remained with Michael until dawn approached. After that first hour, he slept peacefully. During my break, I researched the hospital's employment history. Dr. Marcus Hendricks had worked in pediatrics from 1987 to 1994, quietly terminated following allegations of inappropriate conduct with young patients. He died in a single car accident 3 months after his dismissal. The recurring dreams stopped completely after that night. Michael was discharged the following morning with no further seizure activity. According to his medical file, he's remained healthy since then. I requested a transfer to a different department. Some experiences fundamentally alter your understanding of reality's boundaries. I learned that dreams sometimes serve as advance warnings, glimpses into events that exist just beyond normal temporal perception. I still work overnight shift, but now I pay closer attention when my subconscious tries to communicate important information. I'm Robert, 34 years old, and I work as a property inspector for mortgage companies in Salem, Massachusetts. My job requires objective evaluation of residential structures, analyzing foundation integrity, electrical systems, plumbing functionality, and overall market viability. I've examined hundreds of properties over the past 8 years, maintaining professional detachment regardless of a home's history or atmosphere. The house on Maple Street challenged my commitment to empirical assessment. It was a 1920s colonial revival, impeccably preserved, with original hardwood floors and crown molding that demonstrated superior craftsmanship from a bygone era. The current owner, Mr. Harold Mills, was in his 70s, and preparing to relocate to assisted living. He needed a comprehensive inspection for estate sale purposes. Mr. Mills met me at the front entrance that Tuesday morning in October. He was a tall, methodical man with silver hair and intelligent eyes that seemed constantly analytical. He guided me through the main floor, pointing out renovations and improvements with a practiced efficiency of someone who had conducted this tour multiple times. The basement requires some attention, he mentioned as we finished examining the kitchen. Structurally sound, but there are moisture issues. The basement was accessed through a narrow door adjacent to the pantry. Upon opening it, I immediately noticed a subtle atmospheric shift. Not just the expected coolness of an underground space, but something denser, more oppressive. The wooden stairs creaked appropriately for a house this age as I descended with my flashlight and measuring equipment. The basement appeared unremarkable. Stone foundation, minor water staining along the eastern wall, adequate ceiling height for the era. I was documenting measurements on my tablet when I heard it, a soft scratching sound emanating from behind the far wall. Rodent activity, most likely. Older houses consistently harbor mice populations, but as I continued my inspection, the scratching became more distinct, more rhythmic, almost like coded communication, if coded communication could convey desperation. I approached the wall where the sound originated. The stones were mortared in typical 1920s fashion, but one section appeared newer, the mortar slightly different in color and texture. When I pressed my ear against it, the scratching ceased immediately. Then I heard something that shattered my professional composure completely. A male voice, muffled but unmistakable, saying, "Please, someone needs to know." I stepped back from the wall, convinced I was experiencing auditory hallucination, stress, perhaps, or unusual acoustic properties creating false perceptions. But the voice returned, clearer this time. "I've been waiting so long. Please don't leave without knowing." I rushed upstairs, probably appearing pale and shaken, because Mr. Mills immediately inquired about my well-being. "The basement," I said. I heard something, a voice." His expression transformed completely. The polite hospitality vanished, replaced by something resembling relief. "You heard him too," he said quietly. "I was hoping someone finally would." Mr. Mills led me to the living room and served coffee with hands that trembled slightly. He told me about Thomas Wells, a young man who had lived in the house in 1943. Thomas had discovered his employer embezzling from a defense contractor and threatened to report the theft. He disappeared one night, and the official story claimed he fled town to avoid military service. But he never left, Mr. Mills continued. "My father found his belongings sealed behind that wall when we purchased the house in 1978. Personal effects, identification papers, and remains. Why didn't you contact authorities?" "We did, eventually, but the case was too old, and there was insufficient evidence to pursue prosecution. We had his remains properly interred." But he paused, looking toward the basement door. His voice never left the house. "I've heard him for 45 years. I returned to the basement that afternoon, this time with Mr. Mills accompanying me. We stood beside the newer section of wall, and I heard Thomas's voice again, thanking us for listening, for acknowledging his story. The scratching stopped that day. Mr. Mills said it was the first time in decades that the house felt completely silent. My inspection report was standard, professional, and contained no mention of supernatural phenomena, but I included a recommendation that potential buyers research the property's historical background. The house sold within 6 weeks to a retired couple. According to Mr. Mills, they've reported no unusual sounds or experiences. "Sometimes, I believe, the dead simply need someone to witness their truth before they can finally rest." My name is Thomas, and I'm a 31-year-old communications technician at an emergency dispatch facility outside of Tucson, Arizona. I've been working third shift for 7 years now, monitoring radio equipment that processes emergency transmissions for the county. The work suits my preference for solitude. Just me and banks of sophisticated equipment processing thousands of calls every hour. Most transmissions are routine: police dispatches, fire department responses, medical emergency coordination. After a few months, the constant chatter becomes background noise, as familiar and ignorable as air conditioning hum. In January 2024, I began noticing unusual communications during my overnight monitoring shifts. Among the standard emergency traffic, I started hearing personal conversations that seemed completely out of context. Not scanner enthusiasts or amateur radio operator. These were intimate, desperate exchanges between people in crisis situations. The first one I clearly documented occurred around 2:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. A middle-aged man's voice, panicked and breathless, Jenny, are you there? Please answer. Something's happening. The intruder is still in the house. I initially assumed equipment malfunction or signal interference. Radio equipment occasionally receives cellular conversations or CB transmissions, but something about his tone remained with me. The authentic terror, the urgent need for connection with someone who couldn't respond. Over subsequent weeks, I heard more of these conversations, always between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. Always people in desperate circumstances. An elderly man trying to reach his son while experiencing a heart attack. A teenage boy calling for help while trapped in a burning building. A young woman describing someone following her car on an isolated highway. I began maintaining detailed logs, recording what I heard and when. The conversations were too consistent, too specific to be random interference. They all shared one disturbing characteristic. The speakers seemed to be attempting contact with people who couldn't or wouldn't respond. On February 14th, I heard the most unsettling transmission yet. An older man's voice, calm but urgent. "This is Detective James Morrison, badge number 3847, requesting backup at the Sunset Motel, Room 12. Armed suspect barricaded inside with hostages." I recognized that voice. Detective Morrison had been a regular presence in our emergency communications until his death in a shooting incident 8 months earlier. I had personally processed the final reports from that incident. The following morning, I researched the Sunset Motel. Room 12 had been the scene of a hostage situation 4 years ago. A mentally ill man had barricaded himself inside with his family. The responding detective had been James Morrison, who was killed trying to negotiate their release. I started paying closer attention to the voices during those early morning hours. With careful research, I discovered that many corresponded to real people who had died under traumatic circumstances, people who had been trying to reach someone for assistance when they died. Frank Kowalski, the man I'd first heard, had died during a home invasion 3 years ago, trying to call his daughter when the intruder discovered him. Tommy Chen, the teenage boy, had been trapped in his bedroom during a house fire in 2020, calling for his father who had already perished in another room. The equipment wasn't malfunctioning. It was somehow receiving final transmissions, last desperate attempts at communication from people who died trying to reach out for help. I consulted with a professor of electromagnetic physics who specializes in anomalous phenomena. She explained that intense emotional trauma can sometimes create electromagnetic imprints, especially in locations with sensitive receiving equipment. The dispatch facility, with its array of powerful receivers and transmitters, might be detecting these residual signals. I no longer work at that facility. I requested transfer to day shift at a different location, citing personal reasons. Some knowledge changes you in ways that make normal life impossible. Hearing the final moments of people who died alone, calling out to loved ones who couldn't save them, is not something you simply compartmentalize or ignore. My replacement, a younger technician named Kevin, mentioned during our transition briefing that he sometimes hears strange voices on the radio equipment during overnight hours. I didn't explain what those voices represented. Some discoveries each person must make independently, on their own terms. I still work in communications, but now I appreciate the relative silence of daytime operations. The dead, I've learned, speak most clearly in the quiet hours before dawn, when the boundary between worlds grows thin and desperate voices can finally reach those still alive enough to listen.